Hey everyone, what is up? This is Ete with another episode of The Company Next Door. I am kind of feeling bad today because normally I'm the one so people are coming to my home studio or I'm traveling to them, but today I'm actually back in the vocal booth and I'm with Dave Zimmerman. He's a producer, he's a studio owner, he's a musician, and since we're here, we just decided to use his super expensive equipment over top of mine. And we're between, he's in the control room, I'm in the vocal booth, trying to keep true to the COVID, the social distancing. So, Dave, I see you far away.
Yeah, it's good to have you here, Ete. Thank you so much for letting me be on your podcast. I really look forward to this. This will be great to have a conversation with you.
Awesome, man, and thanks for letting me swing down. So one of the things let me give you a quick overview. So Dave and I met probably almost about 10 years ago. He has been in business about 15 years, running his own recording studio. And he's moved recently to this newer studio. I say recently, but it's been
5 years.
5 years.
Yep.
Okay. So I remember back in the day when he was in a home studio, full basement. You had 3 or 4 extra rooms, great sounds. But now we're here and you've got the huge drum. How tall are those ceilings in that drum room?
Yeah, they're about 15 feet to, they're 16 feet, but they've got some bass trapping and things like that below it that make it about 14 and a half feet is what it looks like. But
gotcha. So definitely things have gone in the right direction over 15 years, and we'll come back and talk about that. But one thing I really love about what Dave has created and what he does is he is a creator. He's a musician himself. He's built this company, which has been slammed. In fact, I used to come here all the time. I haven't over the last few years because he's just always so busy, and I'm impatient. That's my problem. But he's also built, one of the things I've noticed, and I'm excited about this episode because if you guys know already, I love music and I love business. So this is the first time they all come together. But generally in studio environments, for the most part, you don't get, you can get some great experiences, cool atmospheres, but sometimes the business side is lacking. And that's always been hard for me going into studios in Philly and different areas in LA where it was like, we're getting great sounds and great things, but my business brain just gets so frustrated and aggravated because I'm like, come on, man, there's so many inefficiencies. Mm-hmm. The first thing I want to ask you, Dave, is I've noticed, and this is my experience, and I've said this earlier, I've only had 5-star experiences at your studio, whether it was a new studio or the old studio. And the customer service, I mean, from a client standpoint, it's been phenomenal. And I just don't see that happening a lot in the industry. Do you see that happening? Was that why you were like, no, I'm not only going to build a studio, I'm going to build a studio that does great business? Or how did you get there? How did you build this?
Yeah, really good question. For me, I always take the perspective of trying to look from my client's perspective when I make any business decisions at all. And that's always interesting because a lot of times as a business owner, there's things that you want to buy or you want to purchase or you want to do for your studio. But really, I always try to look from my what type of people do I want to first attract to my business?
Okay.
And then what are their needs going to be and what's going to be impressive to them? And what do they want when they come to, and use my services? What kind of results do they want? How do they want to be treated? All of those sort of things have always governed my decisions, everything from, my purchasing decisions to the way I run my business to everything. So that's always a really important perspective. I've seen a lot of studios like where they find a lot of equipment really cool.
The gear. It's all about the gear,
It's all
man.
about, exactly. But the reality is a lot of clients that are going into a recording studio really don't know much about the gear. Yes, they want a nice microphone. They want to know that they're recording on nice gear.
Right.
But whether you've got, a $40,000 piece of equipment or not, they probably don't care so much about that. But what's more important to them is the results that they can get, and that you can get them those results, and that they're going to have a good experience.
So, and does your background as a musician, let's talk about it. You are a drummer.
Mm-hmm.
And
a pianist.
Yeah. And I remember that from the days. Does that help you get into the mindset? Because is that what helped you kind of put yourself in the shoes of your potential clients?
Probably a little bit that, but I think a lot of that kind of stemmed from being from the get-go. This is a very competitive industry to get into.
Yeah.
And for me, a little bit of that, I think, came from just being in a survival mindset of being like, if I'm going to make it, if my business is going to be successful in such a competitive industry, what do I need to do with my business to persuade clients that I am the right decision for their needs? And that's been very difficult, especially in the beginning, where I'm going into a very competitive industry where I have other studios that are way more established than I am at that time, that have way more money into their equipment and their gear. So what is it that I'm going to offer that's going to persuade people that it is worth it to come and use my services over any of these other businesses?
Yeah, and so one thing you mentioned just a few minutes ago, you said, and I don't remember exactly how you put it, but you mentioned that what is the thought process behind the clients that I want to attract?
Yeah.
Now you're throwing me around because you're saying here you are, there's some great studios in the area. We'll come back to that, but there's some, you're 15 years ago, you're a new studio. Mm-hmm. And so you're trying to build a company, which means, I want revenue, bring in more work. Mm-hmm. But you're also saying I want to be selective in the type of clientele in the work that I take.
Absolutely.
Have you always been that way? And why are you that way?
Like probably most business owners, I've made a lot of bad decisions throughout the years. And I'd say right at the beginning, I was just taking any work I could possibly get.
Sure.
But it didn't take me long to realize that doing that actually was hurting my business. For example, if I had a client that came in, they wanted to rush a project, they didn't want to put quality into it. All they were trying to do is just get through something really quick, as cheap as they possibly could. Well, that becomes really bad advertising for me, because what happens? They go out, they show all their friends, and
this was recorded in Noisebox.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When they ask, they're like, and especially if they notice it didn't sound good, and they're like, oh, where did you record this? And then, at this. And I also noticed too that that often the prices that people would pay for the services is often how they'd also value the product that they received as well. So I guess this is going to steer a little bit on a tangent for a second here, but even years down the road, like I've had people that will show up at my studio and they'll bring in a recording that they did at another studio.
Sure.
And they'll say, and they'll basically think it's garbage. They'll be like, oh, I did this at another studio. The guy did it for free. It was fast, all this kind of stuff. And that was their perception of the project. And I'd load it into my system and I'm like, this sounds great. Like the only reason they don't think it's a great project is because
they didn't spend a lot of money.
They didn't spend a lot of money or a lot of time into it. And for me, from the get-go, I have always had this goal of high quality. Like quality is so important for me. And so if I don't want to work with clients that don't want to put that quality into their product. And by requiring that quality for me, that has also been some of the best advertising. I actually don't spend any money on advertising.
Wow.
Haven't for the past probably almost 5 years.
That's amazing.
Yet I stay very busy, and some of my best advertising is a client comes in, we do a really good job on their music, they post it on their social media, and other musicians that want to have a great product. I mean, that's the best advertising for me.
And I love what you're saying. It's all about the quality. And so with that, with giving that quality and being protective of who you work with, the type of sounds that come out of your studio, you have higher prices. And I noticed that. I talked to some different studios, but let's go into that, because if I was just to go to Studio A and Studio B and look at your price, and I may see in some cases in this area you are 45% more per hour.
Yeah.
But what's not reflective in that price, and what I've learned as a client, is what you can do in an hour, it's going to take some other studios 3 hours to do. And I'm
absolutely.
And I've learned that your ability to know your equipment, to get to the mix. I remember there'd be times when we finish a take and I'm going, hey, what if we try this filter, and you kind of lessen, and then you say, oh, you mean like this, and you hit click. I mean, it takes you 5 seconds to work your way around it. So I think there's something that often people get stuck at the pricing. Yeah,
they do.
But your value is high.
And that's always had to be a focus for me as well. And that's definitely a huge focus for me, is workflow, making sure that I am able to work quickly. So it's funny that you mentioned that, because it is kind of frustrating that sometimes people will go just studio shopping on the phone, and the only question they ask is how much are you per hour? And they don't realize that my goal is to give people a better value for probably the same price and faster. Yeah. And so sometimes, if I don't get to have a conversation with them, or if they don't know me or things like that, then they may pass me by. But I do have quite a few clients that have worked with me. I've had clients that have worked with me, have left to go to a cheaper studio, another place, and then have come back because they've realized that they're getting the same, or they're able to get their projects done and finished at pretty close to the same price. And so for me I do feel like if you do charge higher prices, you do have to be able to justify it to some degree. Yeah. And for me, the justification is that I am able to work very fast, very efficiently. I know my equipment. I know what I'm doing. I've done it, or I have the experience behind me to be able to get results quickly and get really good professional quality recordings.
Absolutely. And if there's any musicians listening, man, I'm telling you, this is the place to go. Don't get scared by the pricing, because the overall pricing will be very fair, and the value is extremely high. So let me ask you this, and you may not know the answer to this question. How many songs in 15 years have you recorded in your studio?
Yeah, really good question.
Take a guess.
I know it's thousands at this point. So I did try to do the math about 3 or 4 years kind of estimating. And at that point, I knew I had done way over 2,000 songs at that point. I typically, there are days where I might make it through 3 more basic kind of songs, where they're not too complicated. There's days where I might get through 1 song. There's a day where I get through a song and a half. A lot of my clients may come and work on part of the project and then come back later to finish it. But I do go through a lot of songs. And
so let me ask you this, because for me, that just sounds like a dream. I mean, and I know sometimes when we do the things we love, especially our passions and hobbies for work, that dream, it's a little more like work. But, working with bands, producing albums, talk a little bit about that experience. Is it what people picture? Because a lot of people haven't been in a studio. They've seen, the MTV, the Hollywood thing, and they picture this glorious, glamorous thing. They don't realize it's just a bunch of people working. Can you give some insight into what a recording studio session is like?
Yeah, I'll do my best job on that. It's kind of interesting, because since I live it every day, it's kind of hard to know what to pinpoint for somebody kind of looking in. But first of all, I have to say I do absolutely love my work. Yeah, I do. I guess I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't love what I'm doing, because from the get-go, even when I was going through schooling, which I did, I got a music major and things like that. My perception on all of it was always, a lot of people may go to college to make a lot of money. I'm going to college to do what I love. And so my goal was, so I thought prior that I wouldn't be able to make very good money, but at least I'd be doing something I love. And I think part of that came from, in the past, I grew up with my dad hating his job. He hated all his work that he was doing for a long time, and I just remember thinking, I don't want to fall into an area where I don't love what I'm doing. I want to love my work. So as far as moving forward to what these recording sessions are like, I absolutely love that I get to collaborate with clients on their projects and get to be part of their music. I try to be transparent at the same time. So for example, what I mean by that is a lot of my clients come in with a song where maybe they play the guitar and they sing. And they have written a song that they want to get recorded, and they want it to sound professional. They want all the instrumentation in it. And so for me, being a drummer and a pianist.
You're a rhythm guy.
Yeah, I'm a rhythm guy. I'm a good complement for a lot of people in those shoes, because I can add in the drums, I can add in bass, strings, and kind of fill out the rest of the arrangement for them in a way that can make it sound really good. Wow. and not require involving too many other people, that doesn't drive the price up too high either. Sure. And so these moments where I get to collaborate with them and work with their projects really varies from client to client, but in most cases it's a really fun experience. And we kind of feed off of each other's ideas and are able to put together a really cool project. I think part of my work that's so important is to be able to read people, like to be able to, like also being in this industry. For example, I may have somebody, or we may get to the point where we're recording vocals. And one of my jobs, I feel like as a music producer, is to get the best performance out of that person that I can.
Yeah.
And being able to know, because every single person is going to be different. And almost everybody that walks into my studio will say, I want you to give me all the feedback that you think of while we're working through the project. But in reality and in practice, that's not typically the case. It's not. I think a lot of times they maybe want more praise on how good they sound and things like that. So if I have some insights as to how I think they could improve something, I'm a person that tries to kind of read the situation and figure out, like, I may give a suggestion and kind of see how the response is. But I had a situation where between my last studio and this studio, I was in a temporary studio where we were using all cameras, and it was hard to kind of see the facial expressions of the singers. And I remember one singer that came in, and they were just so close to nailing the type of sound we needed for a certain project. And I kept pushing, and because I couldn't quite read their expression, I got to the point where I pushed them too far.
The vocalist.
The vocalist.
Okay, so by pushing, you just mean, hey, let's do it again. Yeah. Give me another take, but maybe try this.
Exactly.
And then, so because there is a line, so on this one, you couldn't see him, you couldn't communicate, so you pushed the line.
And I pushed the line, and right at that moment, everything just fell apart for them. Like, they went from being at a 9 almost to that 10 that we needed, all the way down to like a 4 or 5. And so it really is important, because if I can, and on the, like other things that sometimes are required is maybe somebody comes in and they don't sound that great right at first. Yeah. And instead of being there fast to be like, okay, you need to do this and you need to do this and you need to do this, and give them this list of things that's just going to give them more anxiety, I've got to, instead I realized that most of the time giving them confidence and being like, oh yeah, we're going to be fine. You're sounding great. You're going to get there. Yeah. That kind of stuff will improve them way more, or improve their performance way more than me trying to give all these little specifics.
Let's stay on that for a second, because that concept that you just brought up is really powerful. And it is, if you want to encourage people or help them get to where you believe they can get to reach their potential, whether it's a technician or whatever it is, the best and the most accurate direction there is to build them up.
Yeah,
to encourage
absolutely.
them. Because some people would tear you down in that situation.
Yep.
And then, like you're saying, you see them, their face drops, and then they start doing this whole thing. And so I love that. So you try to work with them. So have you ever had someone come in that was like tone deaf?
Yeah. Luckily not as much. I occasionally I think what happens a lot of times is people come to the studio once they've received some sort of encouragement. So I don't think I ever get anybody who just really can't sing unless they know it. There's sometimes people that are just doing something funny for whatever, for their family or for a corporate thing or something, and they know they can't sing. And in that case, we just have fun with it, right? And I'm not going to sit there and be critical about what they're doing with their vocals or anything. We're just going to get them recorded and make it sound the best that we can from there. Yeah,
and I know on the other side, because I've been in the situation literally in this room with Dave over there. We were doing a song. I'm actually remembering. I'm having flashbacks now, man.
That's awesome.
I'm going to start having a nightmare. No, I'm just kidding. But it was a song called 800 South, and it was just the most words I've ever done in a song. A lot of things lyrically happening. I remember you were pushing me. I think it was 3 or 4 hours on one song, and I remember just getting to this point, like I remember at a time I was like, I don't know if I can do this. Anyway, but we got through it, and now I listen back and I can see all that effort and that push that you gave me. It really paid off. Versus just saying, "Oh, that's okay. That's a good take." Just settling. So that's an interesting part of your job.
Yeah. So that's a big part. Of course, like any business, you have a lot of times where you're doing things that aren't so fun. Like for me, I hate doing reconciling and things like that with my finances. I still do a lot of stuff like that. Of course, I don't enjoy cleaning up after sessions and things,
Sure.
and I don't. I spend hours answering emails and text messages, some of them not being so fun to respond to at times and things like that. And so I think every business is going to have some tedious stuff that isn't the most fun. But for the most part, there is magic that happens here in my work. And what's really attracted me most to my career as to what I do, I actually, between the age of 16 and about 25, I once went down and I made a list of all the jobs I had between then, and it was over 25 different jobs.
Tell us some of them.
Yeah, so like for example, I was my first job, I worked at Orange Julius, and then I also had worked at like Burger King. I had been a server at like Red Lobster, Diamond Lil's, Tony Roma's. I did jobs where I went and spray painted the numbers on curbs.
Yeah.
I was a field coordinator for soccer. I was a referee for soccer. I worked at a laser tag place. I
don't see any patterns to these.
Yeah, they're all
just
kind
one
of
pattern, money.
Yeah, and I was a custodian. Wow. I was an EFY counselor for youth camp and things like that. So I had quite a variety. Oh, and I also taught piano lessons and I taught drum lessons. So a big variety of different jobs. And I'm so glad I was able to do that for me because what I realized, and probably where the moment actually hit me, was when I actually had my laser tag job. I remember loving that job. And part of the job, they'd even let us on nights where it wasn't too busy and customers would come in. If they needed somebody to play laser tag against them, they would
got to jump in.
They'd let us jump in. And
that's
so
awesome.
Yeah, and I'm like, I can't believe I'm getting paid for doing such a fun job, right?
Yeah.
And so I hit the realization that, you know what, some jobs can be fun and you can enjoy your work and your jobs from doing that. But I also realized too that the jobs I hated the most for my personality type, was jobs where it was like, for example, Burger King was a super boring job for me because it was like once I learned how to make every hamburger, it was just the same thing over and over and over and over again.
You weren't being challenged. You weren't growing.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
And I hated that so bad. And in my career here in the music industry, like you've got so many things changing. Technology is moving forward so quickly in this industry.
Oh my gosh.
Styles are changing. There's always something to learn. And it feels like the more you learn, the more there still is to learn.
Yeah.
And everything's a challenge. And even after 15 years, I'm constantly learning new things. It's a constantly growing skill set.
Which is probably the part what keeps you, I mean, after 15 years, it would be easy to have burnout.
Yeah.
Especially if so I guess this constantly challenging and learning and growing is probably what keeps you excited and enthused about it. How much of your day, or we could say a week, how much percentage do you spend investing into learning new plugins, studying new microphones, that type of thing?
Yeah, that's a
lot,
great
right?
question. Well, it used to be a ton more when I was less busy. Nowadays, I'm so busy that some of that learning does have to be kind of on the spot. Like, luckily, I know a lot of the software already to a certain degree, but I may get like a new update of software, and while I'm working with the client, I know kind of what the new features are, and in some cases, I'm using it and kind of figuring it out a little bit as I go. But usually, if I get hung up on something after that session that evening or whatever, I'm going to spend time figuring out how to do that and make sure that I'll be efficient for the next session. But a lot of things like how does a microphone sound and things like that has to kind of happen on the job, because like my earlier years when I was less busy, I would spend tons of time studying. I would spend probably 20, 30 hours just on forums and different articles. And I mean, YouTube was getting a little bit better, getting going, but I'd watch whatever I could find there and study and practice with all my downtime.
And you also, and I don't know if you still are, but I remember a while ago, maybe 10 years ago, whenever we first met, I was actually trying to learn something at home. and I feel like you were making videos. I think
I did.
You made videos because I remember one time I was like,
did.
"Oh, there's Dave." So you were still like creating content and teaching.
Yeah,
well, I don't know if it was Pro Tools, but you were.
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel called Recording.Guru.
Okay, awesome.
And there was a period of time where I wanted to take a stab at the YouTube thing and kind of see how that would go, because after working for, at that point it was 10 years of doing this kind of stuff, I felt like there's so much stuff I wanted to share.
Yeah.
And so I did. I made quite a few videos, and also at the time I was doing some teaching over at BYU, and a lot of my students I had needed to know basic stuff that I found like I had so many students and I got so tired of teaching this exact same basic thing over and over again.
Of it, yeah.
Exactly. So it's like, if I make a bunch of these videos and I can just ask them to go watch the videos, they'll get more value out of their lessons because I don't have to spend their lesson time focusing on these. I can focus on other things outside of this.
So I love that. Are you a systems guy? Because that's like kind of building a system to take care of something, right?
Yeah.
And
totally.
Some
yes,
people are. I love systems and processes and creating them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because I maybe don't completely understand the system's definition, but like for me, I always consider workflow, which is maybe the same thing, like workflow, and always trying to solve problems with whether it's with technology or whatever I need to do. So for one example is with scheduling. I hit this period of time where you can imagine not having a secretary. I would find that at the end of every day, I would spend at least a couple hours answering emails that were like, okay, I have availability Thursday from this to this, and Friday from this to this, and Saturday from this to this, and the next Monday from these long emails, and I would send it out to like 10 people, and then they would get back to me and schedule, and then likely everybody would ask for the same time, and then I would have to redo the email again. Now what's available is this and this, and so I was wasting so much time on things like that. So for me, as you're aware now, I have my online scheduler, which has worked great for me, where I just make sure I block out the times I need to stay ahead of it, and that's always a little tricky, but making sure I've got birthdays blocked out and things like that on my schedule so that I can have the time that I need in advance. But then I let my clients get on and handle that themselves, and many of my clients really like that because they have control over the schedule. They don't have to get in touch with me or anything, and I love it because it's saving me hours and hours every day by having that all automated.
Awesome. So you really enjoy problem solving.
I do. Absolutely.
Looking at the bottlenecks in the company and finding creative solutions to resolve them or make them better for the customer.
Yeah, absolutely. And that happens a ton in also the software side of what I do. For example, certain things that I find myself doing a lot of is a lot of times people may do like vocal stacking, for example, which is, they record their voice or, they'll sing the melody and then they may have a harmony part they sing, or they may sing the melody multiple times.
Yeah.
And so for me, having software and being up to date on software and knowing what software is out there that can be able to help speed up those processes has been really good for me. It's kind of funny because there have been moments where I'm like, I can't believe I just spent tons of money to make less money. It almost seemed like, right? Because it's less hours for the client.
Yeah.
But that's always paid off in the long run because clients value that, and it's part of them looking and saying, okay, look, I'm paying a little more for this guy, but he's got systems in place, workflows in place that he can go so much faster, and he cares about my time, and my money is trying to give me the best value.
What is that like? And maybe it's different now because your clientele, 15 years in, I imagine you said when you were starting, you were, trying to get the work in, right?
Yeah.
We're all kind of that way.
Yeah.
And then as you grow and mature, you go, whoa, like you said, I don't want my name on that or whatever it is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So now you're working with clients that you really prefer. So obviously it's going to be overall better experience.
Absolutely.
But what is that like? I mean, people come to you, you may have a young band that maybe they're high school kids and they've put their heart into this great album and they were able to, fund $3,000 to come in and make an EP. Mm-hmm. And they come in and they trust you with that money. Like, what is that like?
Yeah, I definitely feel that responsibility. There's that responsibility for sure where you know it means a lot to everybody that's coming in. I mean, for some people, they have written and rewritten these songs.
Yeah.
And I realized I never finished my comment earlier where I was saying at the same time I'm trying to be transparent with what I add to projects as well. And that's another kind of challenging area. For example, I may have certain strengths and like certain sounds, but when a client comes in and they have their vision of their song and what they want, I don't want to put my stamp of sound, of my influence necessarily on their album, right? I want it to be theirs. I want them to leave and be like, this is my song, not, oh, this is my song mixed in with Dave Zimmerman at Noisebox Studios. I want them to be thinking, yes, this is mine. I want them to feel proud of that. And so I really, I do feel the responsibility of giving them options and showing, giving them suggestions and things like that as we go. But really, I still give them the final say on that.
Sure.
And really respect their opinions. And I have to have a thick skin because I may think I have the most amazing idea that they shut down and think is terrible. And I've got to realize that doesn't necessarily need to be taken personal.
Sure.
It's just that's not what their vision is. Yeah. And my goal is to try to help them capture their vision and so that they're as happy as can be when they're done with their project.
Gotcha. So let's go back to the Burger King days, the glory days.
Yeah.
Burger King laser tag, because you said earlier that your dad just hated his job. Mm-hmm. What was his job?
So he did BIOS programming for like motherboards and things like that.
I don't even know what that is, and I hate it.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't even know exactly. Yeah. I mean, I always he worked on supercomputers a lot, kind of doing BIOS kind of programming, and he did several other jobs. At my young age, I didn't always understand all of them. He also owned a piano business, and he actually enjoyed his piano business, but that always kind of took a back seat to his other jobs where he was making more money with. And luckily nowadays he actually is doing his piano business full time now that he's kind of in his retirement age and things like that. And so he's happier now, but back then I just remember him not being happy with and a lot of times they'd have him do work where he would work on something really hard for a couple of months and then they just scrap it. Yeah. And that would happen a lot to him. And I'm like, I can't imagine putting this effort and time and energy on something that
just be thrown away.
Yeah, exactly.
So you, obviously that had an impact on you because you said one thing that was important to you was to find a career, find something that you loved, which is not where everybody always starts. You know, most people, like you said earlier, they go to school to make money. Yeah. You went to school to find something you loved. When you were going through this process, you mentioned all these different jobs, Burger King, laser tag, etc. Was that what you were just trying to find something that fit that description of what you would love? Because then you stumbled upon laser tag, and you go, wow, that's really fun.
Yeah, well, for me, I would actually, it was just me mainly trying to make
a few bucks.
Yeah, make a few bucks, I think, and just finding what job kind of appealed to me at the time. I've always been a little entrepreneur minded, if that's a word.
Yeah.
When I was even younger, I would put on magic shows in our neighborhood and charge my neighbors to come watch me do cheesy magic tricks.
All right, hold on. We can't let that one go. So, were you in a cape and a hat, like that kind of?
Yeah, I did. I even had my magic cape. I did all of that, and I remember my older sisters just laughing and teasing me so much about that. But I got a cotton candy machine for one of my birthdays, and I would make cotton candy and stick it in a plastic bag.
Show and sell them?
No, not this was separate. And I would put cotton candy in these plastic bags and go door to door and try to sell it to my neighbors as well. And I'd go buy party favors and sell those to my neighbors. Like I was always kind of trying to find some way to make a quick buck.
I can't get past the magic. I'm still picturing this kid out there in the cul-de-sac. Oh man.
You would have been impressed. Yeah. I know it.
Wait, more importantly, can you still do the magic?
Yeah, some of them. I know a few card tricks still.
It pays off when you get older and you got kids and nieces and nephews. Yeah. I mean, I've tried to, but I've had no success. So you've always had an interest in this kind of spirit, this entrepreneurial spirit inside you. This kind of. Did you have an idea at that time? So help me connect the dots from this laser tag job to job to job to you said you went to school.
Yeah. So let me tell you when I knew I was going to do this for a career. Because that's kind of probably what you're looking for. And this is actually really funny because in 9th grade they have you take those career tests.
Yeah.
And in ninth grade, I switched from piano to drums, and I was playing drums in middle school in the jazz band, and everybody thought that was so cool to play drums and drum set. And I just remember feeling at that time, I was like, I love music, and I want to make this a career. And I just kept thinking more and more about how, like, I know this may be a difficult career to get into, but if somebody's making money in it,
it's happening.
So if somebody is making money in music, I want it to be me. I'm going to make this happen. And I remember having some conversations with my parents, and they were not happy with that. It was. They constantly were like, okay, you need to choose a more realistic job. But anyway, I took this career test in ninth grade, and it actually told me I should be a recording engineer.
Really?
Yeah, it was so funny.
I can't believe that was even an option.
Yeah, well, it was funny because I read all the stuff about being a recording engineer that they had, all the information they had, and everything said that everybody hated the job. And so it's like, well, I don't want to do this job, and this is what everybody hates. And so I knew I wanted to do something in music, but for me, I also really liked video games and the music and sound and all that kind of stuff. And so when I was heading into like high school and into college, my goal then was to become a sound designer for video games. So somebody who would compose the music and create the sound effects and all that kind of stuff. But the funny thing is when I got to college, I found so much joy in helping other people's projects, and I found that I was so attracted to the technology side of things that I kind of naturally fell back into being a recording engineer. And I didn't even think about that ninth grade test until I was kind of back in being a recording engineer. And I remember thinking back on that and being kind of or just laughing about that had actually kind of predicted where I ended up going with everything. I'm sure for most people that rarely is an accurate test.
Yeah, I don't know if those were meant to actually have any truth to them.
Yeah.
So that's cool. So you just had this, you had the passion, and then but you also, for the music, you're discovering that around that time.
Yeah.
But you also had you just love doing things on your own and creating things in that sense. So you went to school. Did you go to recording school?
So I went to BYU as at first I wasn't even in the music program. It was challenging to get into the music program. I knew I wanted to be a music major. Again, my parents weren't happy about this when they found out I was going to be a music major. They actually even my mom called my percussion professor when I got in and told him that he needed to sit down with me and talk about what a real career is. And he stood up for me, and he actually said to my mom, he's like, well, I make a living in music. And that kind of took my mom back, I think, a little bit. And she didn't say much to me after that until I got to the end of college. And then she started to tell me about all the other job opportunities that were unrelated with music. And I just had to keep reminding her, I'm like, Mom, music is what is what I feel destined to do. I feel like this is what I'm supposed to do in my life. And I'm going to do what is needed to make it happen. And it's worked out for me. And the ironic thing about it is, looking back over the past 15 years of being in business, I've actually felt like it's been less of a risk than if I had some full-time jobs.
Yeah.
I mean, we've gone through recessions. There's this whole year is an example of where lots of people have been losing their jobs and things like that. And you've been busy? And I've been busy and somehow still making it. And a lot of times, I mean, I'm not going to get fired unless my clients fire me.
Yeah.
I kind of view all my clients as they're my boss.
Yeah.
So as long as I am working hard and doing my best, I've been staying in business. And even through these times that I thought my business would slow down, or I thought, like when other studios open up around the area, of course that always stresses me out, because I think everybody's always aware of, their competition a little bit there.
Yeah.
Not that you're cutthroat, but just that, it's going to have some sort of impact.
It's going to have some impact.
And so, but somehow my business has just continued to carry on and be steady for me.
That's such a blessing. That's so awesome. So the moment you started Noisebox, so about 15 years ago, you were finishing up school. You've had, you're entrepreneurial. You've got the music side. You're ready to go. how hard was it to get this off the
it's
ground?
hard.
Yeah,
it was way hard. I think every business owner can probably relate to how hard it is to get the ball rolling with a business. And there were a lot of sacrifices made at the beginning there to get going. I think like initially my plan when I was starting Noisebox Studios was that I was going to have a part-time job and kind of run this at the same time. But I quickly realized that just didn't work. Like I could not do two things at once. I had to just I had to commit completely to Noisebox Studios and put my energy into it to get it going and reach out to potential clients. And I mean, I was going to venues to meet bands and make connections everywhere that I could. And if I had any other downtime outside of that, I was perfecting my skills because I wanted to be ultra sharp, that when somebody finally gave me the chance to work on their project, I wanted to be sharp on.
Were you married at the time? Did you have a family when you started the company?
So we didn't have any kids. We had one on the way. And my wife, right when we got started Noisebox Studios, my wife for the first year was working as a middle school teacher.
Okay, so you had some income.
So there was some income there to help.
But she was supportive of this venture?
And that I'm glad you bring that up because honestly, through those tough times, having my wife being supportive was so important. It was. There was even, I remember at one point feeling like I was ready to kind of give up at the point because it was just getting so hard and it was just so much work and I remember one point where I kind of hit that moment. My wife actually was like, "No, we're going to do this. You're going to make it happen." And so it would have been easier for her to just be like, "Yeah, let's do something. Let's do something else that's going to be a little easier." But she knew the passion I had for it from the beginning, and she just kept encouraging and being supportive. And without that, it would have been very difficult.
For those of you listening, so Dave's this studio is about 5 years old, but what he did is he built a new home in South Provo. Is Provo?
Yep.
Okay. And then as kind of like, I don't know if it's actually I guess it is connected to the house.
Yes.
But this huge studio, and I don't know what the square footage is.
Yeah, it's a little over 1,000 square feet.
1,000 square feet. It's got 3 rooms, control room. But anyway, what's the dynamic there? Because your dad, how many kids do you have at home right now?
Yeah, so I have 4 kids.
So you got 4 kids. You got your wife. Meanwhile, you can just open one door and you're in your office.
Yeah, absolutely. That is such a challenge. It's been a challenge for, I'm sure anybody that has a business that starts taking off or start doing well, you hit that moment where the business starts to run you instead of you running the business. And I started hitting days. I remember at one point where I would start early in the morning and then, I'd be working with clients all day and then I'd hit 10 o'clock at night and all of a sudden I would notice I was starving. And I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't eat lunch. I didn't eat dinner. I wasn't taking care of myself at all.
It's a good weight loss program, but no.
But definitely, not what you want to do. And then I started realizing even though I was at home, you would think, oh yeah, if you work at home, you're going to be this family guy that's going to always have all this time with their family.
Sometimes.
But it's so crazy that I was like, you know what, this is so ironic. Here I'm working at home and I'm not developing these relationships with my family like I should.
Yeah.
And I eventually just with that, I talked about having that scheduling app. I kept saying, because again, I always wanted to fill my schedule with as many hours as I could, but I eventually just hit this point where I'm like, you know what? I have to take care of myself. And I went through and I blocked off lunch times across my schedule.
I've seen it.
You've
got Sunday times blocked off.
Sundays blocked off. I got my Monday nights blocked off, a Wednesday night blocked off, and I have Saturday nights blocked off for my wife. And so, on top of that, what's even harder, that's one step, but the next step is then protecting those because you get busy as a business owner and people have deadlines and things they're trying to push real quick. And it's so easy to be like, to have somebody come up and be like, look, I really need to have this done tonight. I'm performing tonight. I need this and this and this and this. I know it's last minute. To be like, okay, fine, I'll give up my dinner time to do this. But you can't do that. You have to protect it at all those times and really make sure that you have those times to be with your family. And on top of that, this happened just like 4 years ago after I moved here and started getting really busy. We hit a summer and I was busy that whole summer long. And I remember when the summer ended, I was like, I haven't done anything this summer. Like I didn't go to Lagoon ever. I didn't, I didn't do anything with my family or anything fun. And I was like, how did I just let this whole summer go by and do nothing but work? Yeah, I made a lot of money that summer, but it was not fair, or I felt robbed at that time. And so I learned my lesson again, okay, that's it. Now looking forward, I'm going to be blocking off these times down the road to make sure that I've got these times with my family, because if you don't do that, I guarantee it just won't happen. You have to prioritize your family.
And you have to have a level of self-care, and you have to have a level of, if you don't take care of yourself and spend time like that, you'll just burn out.
Absolutely.
So maybe that's part of your formula for not burning out after 15 years is you've kind of figured out this workflow. Okay, Sunday's off, Monday night, Wednesday, Saturday, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. If I did not have the time, and I can even still sense that at times, like because you'll have those weeks where you're doing tons of work just back to back to back, and when you start to just feel that burnout starting to happen, and then you don't do as well with your work, or I shouldn't say you don't do as well. It's harder to do well.
Right. Yeah, you got to have balance. Mm-hmm. So you're in the old studio, you start the company, your wife's supportive, and you mentioned, there was times where she was just really keeping you strong, keeping you going. Mm-hmm. When did it start taking off? Was it a year? Was it 5 years? Because I know now, and I don't know how long it's been, you're booked out for... Your schedule's it's hard.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I could probably pull it up right now and maybe get in October. I don't know. So where did that switch? Because that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's the dream. But we'll get into that. But when did it start picking up?
Yeah, it probably was more... I'd say probably about 3 or 4 years in.
Okay.
Like as far as making it, like after that first year, I was able to make it, but there were some scary times.
Yeah.
Like, and I definitely believe in a higher power, and I believe in prayer, and I believe that many miracles happen for me, because there were so many months where I was hitting towards the end of the month and our bills were due, and I had nobody on my schedule, and I was like, how am I going to make this like $800 or whatever that I'm going to owe at the end of this month? How am I going to do this? And I think sometimes, though, you can take advantage of these scary moments because it requires you to be creative.
Yeah,
I think a lot of those times I was like, look, I'm not just going to sit here and be like, oh, I hope something just happens. Like I was like, okay, I owe money next week, and I don't see anybody on my schedule. I don't see how I'm going to work this out. And so I would be on social media or whatever, trying to find bands and giving deals or whatever. I was constantly always trying to find a way to make that work, and miraculously it always has.
And that's
in
awesome.
Some way.
Yeah, and I feel like when you're forced and your back's against the wall, and like you said, you're forced to become creative. And there's things that I've done that I look back, I'm like, I can't believe I did that.
Yeah.
But when you're forced against the wall, you just do, and it's amazing. Yeah. And like you said, higher power with faith and all these things, it's amazing how you can survive and move on. And then so then after 3 years, you start getting you're getting more comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. I was getting more comfortable. My schedule. And now I didn't have an online scheduler quite at that time, but I was doing a lot of those emails and trying to get things scheduled. And it was interesting because I also wanted to work at other studios when I started my business, but other studios just weren't hiring.
Yeah.
And so but once I started to get busier and get a little bit of a reputation, I actually was able to go back to some of these studios I had sent demos off to before, and I found a studio that was actually willing to use me for their sessions. And so I started to be able to supplement my business with some work at some other studios, and that was great for me for a period of time. And then they had plenty of work. Of course, it didn't pay as well as my own work with my own business, but it was something to fill in those gaps. But then eventually it just hit the point where my business was just doing so well that I just couldn't continue to work for them anymore. And then that's when I had the scheduler all going well. And then the next thing I knew, I'm booked out months.
So where do you go from here? Because, in my mind, I'm thinking of a few places where you could scale out or, different streams of revenue, different directions. But where do you want to go? Because right now, you are it. You are the core of the business. And I know you have interns here, and I've seen different helpers and things, but it's you, and you're phenomenal, and you're the reason it's successful. But where do you want to go?
Yeah, so good question. And it is kind of interesting because I have asked myself this question so many times because I feel like my work and my business is kind of like what it'd be like to be a painter, right? Like if you're a painter and people hire you to make paintings, it's hard to just then hire some people to do the paintings for you. Yeah. You know, like people aren't going to go for that. But what I have been doing the last couple years is I've been starting to bring a few more people on the team. So I've got right now during the COVID time, it's kind of stopped a little bit. But I mentioned how I don't work on Monday nights, Wednesday nights, and Saturday nights. So, for me, I was looking at, hey, there's times when the studio's just sitting here doing nothing.
Not making,
and it should be, I should be able to fill it, right? So for me, what I've started to do is find people that I really trust and get them in here running some of those sessions during those times. And it is challenging and it's hard because I think for me, after running the business solo for so long, having trust for other people to run your work, because you always wonder, are they going to care as much about the product and the end result as I do? Because this is, my reputation's on the line and they could mess it up for me. And in fact, I had one time where I did bring somebody on to do a session and they ended up taking longer than typical to get the client the end project. And I was just so frustrated because I could tell it had frustrated the client. And so at that point I had lost a lot of trust in bringing other people on. So it's been challenging for me as a business to find people that I trust enough to be able to carry things forward with the same values and the same standard that I want to uphold here with my business. But I have also asked that question, how would I expand from here? Would it eventually become multiple studios, that sort of thing? And at the same time, too, I'm also asking myself, how necessary is it to me to move forward? Like, am I happy with where I'm at? Am I happy? Because I'm providing for my family just fine. Yep. I love the work I'm doing. I'm loving the quality of the work that's coming out. In some ways, I guess what I'm saying is I'm pretty happy with where things are. And if opportunities continue to open up and I see a way forward that I can carry the same values and feel good about it, then I think I would. But for the time being, I've been struggling with the same questions, and kind of working different scenarios out in my mind.
Well, I love your answer. I actually had an interview with Howard from Plan One last night, Financial, and we talked about this. And he was sharing from the book The E-Myth. It talks about when you start a company, what does the end look like? And he talks about a lot of times it's like, we were talking this conversation where it's like, with entrepreneurs especially, it's like, ooh, just chasing all the shiny little things and go, big, big, big. Mm-hmm. But there's never an end game. It's just about, we'll get bigger. I'll get 10 trucks. I'll get 30 trucks, And what you're saying challenges that and says, wait a minute, what's the why behind it, right? Yeah. My family's taken care of. We got a nice house. I can do what I love. Mm-hmm. I have my Monday, my Sunday, Monday night, Wednesday, Saturday, all this time off.
Yeah.
I think it's good to challenge it. So I like that you brought that up.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So let's switch gears just for a sec. I get a couple more questions for you.
Yeah, great.
I know you do all kinds of sessions. I know you record everything from acoustic artists to rock bands. And you've done some orchestral work.
Yeah.
I'm actually intrigued by that. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've done? Was it an orchestra? What size? I just think that's interesting because I've seen a lot of bands record and a lot of this. Haven't seen an orchestra. What'd you do?
No, really good question. So I do. I absolutely love working on orchestral music. I mean, even back to where I was saying, like working on video game music being a goal. Like back then, the video games were very orchestral and very like synthetic, like
cinematic.
Yeah, exactly. Very cinematic mixed with electronic elements.
Yeah.
And I love that type of style of music. And of course, going through college, I played in orchestras and bands and things like that too, and I've always loved those sounds as well. And so one thing with my studio, with it being 1,000 square feet, it's not one where we're going to have a orchestra come in and we're not going to record them. So a lot of these orchestral projects, they're one of two things. Either the tracks for the orchestra, like the strings and the brass and all of that, if they're all live instrumentalists, they will be recorded at another studio, and then the tracks will be sent here for final mixing and things like that. So that happens. But there's also some really good technology nowadays with a lot of the call samplers or virtual instruments, where the quality of those has gotten just incredible.
It's crazy.
To the point where you can program a string section nowadays, and most, like a large majority of people would have a very hard time telling that it wasn't a real orchestra. And so I work with that with a lot of my clients, because a lot of my clients love adding orchestral elements, and I have an understanding of the orchestra and how to arrange for those. And so that is an advantage that I can offer to a lot of my clients, to be able to help them have very cinematic or orchestral ornaments in their music.
That's cool. So what makes Noisebox unique? We have, we've got some great studios close by. June Audio, and there's Solarium. I'm not going to start naming them because I'll forget them. But what is it here?
You've hit a lot of the points already with, like my goal for the quality and taking care of the customer, I think is just so important. And then experience is the other big one. Like having the experience that I have, I feel like I'm able to help people achieve things that are dreams for many of these people. Like my goal is always, I want that the things that I work on when they leave the studio, I want it to sound commercial right alongside with what other things on the radio sound like. I want that top quality for my clients, and that takes experience to get there. A lot of people, including myself, when I got into recording, I thought that was something I was going to be able to have those skills to do within a few months of working on things. But it's not. It's years and thousands of songs of mixing and figuring things out and knowing when you go too far or when you're doing too little and so forth on the music to make it fit to the point where it's something that's commercial and is going to work. So for me, what's important is I'm a studio that's been around for 15 years. There's a lot of studios that start and
close down.
Close down.
I see it all the time, man.
And so for me, having that experience, I think that's for me is a really big advantage. And then on top of that, it's really important for me that people have a good experience. Like one kind of goofy thing people might find about the studio is I've got all these color changing lights and that I can turn on, and I can make it all blue or what, but you set
the vibe.
Right. And it's not going to really change the sound quality, but it is going to give a good experience. Yeah. And that's one thing I have to always realize is clients don't, yes, they're coming in to get a recording, but a lot of people are coming also for an experience. Yeah. They want to be able to remember this time and enjoy the process of making their song.
And you can tell, because when you come here, the layout is fantastic, but just the spacious rooms, the way it's treated, all that plays into that experience.
Yeah.
So if you can share with us, have you had any artists or projects that you've recorded or mixed or been a part of that have had some success?
Yeah.
Like
so
bigger than Orem High School Radio?
Yeah, I mean, probably the biggest one project that I've worked on that has had tons of success is Gentry.
Yeah, they're huge.
So if you haven't looked them up yet, they are incredible. The music, the quality. Now, I don't do the music producing, meaning like I don't do the arranging of their music, but I do all of their mixing, their mastering, their editing. I record a lot of like their drums and their guitars and things like that for their music. But they're
they made it to the Billboard?
Yeah, they have. They've even reached #1 on, I'd have to look again, I think it was on one of the Heat Seeker charts.
Wow.
And so, but they've been in the top 5 multiple times for, especially on the classical crossover charts and things like that, for a lot of their music. And
that's pretty awesome. That's exciting, man. That's amazing.
So I've had some success with working with them. And a lot of times, the way that a lot of success gets judged in the music industry is how far it goes, which a lot of times is kind of like how good their marketing team is instead of how good is the product. But
I know. and I'm sure there's tons of projects you've worked on that you've just really enjoyed. And
where I'm just like, where I feel like, man, if this had the right marketing team behind it, this would have been a hit. But one project I'm really excited about that's coming out soon is this one for a band called the People's Thieves. And this has been an album that we've been working on for a couple years. And it's been a ton of work.
Really?
But the sounds and the detail that has gone into this album, that we're now in the final stages of getting the final mastering and things like that put together on it. That'll be being released here shortly. So that could be an album if you wanted to check out some more of the popular side of what we're doing. That'll be coming out soon, and I'm hoping that goes somewhere because it's awesome. It's awesome, and some incredible musicians. That the people that I've been able to work with that has just been awesome.
That's all. People's Thieves. Okay,
yeah, People's Thieves.
We'll be looking for that one. So, if you were to give a piece of advice to a young entrepreneur, something that a big takeaway or two that you've just spent the last 15 years, you say, "Oh, wait, let me just share a couple things with you." What would you share? What would you? No, that's hard.
That's a good question because I've got so many things that I would think of, but I think a big one is again to still just love what you do. Like I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs or just family or people that just chase the money. And if you just chase the money, like you find out what pays well and you just go for that, but you have no passion for it, like you probably won't even make that work.
Yeah.
Right? Like I am such a believer that if you chase what you really have a passion for, that it'll eventually pay off in some way. But you don't, like, again, I'm not that you do it just to pay off.
Sure.
But if you are doing something you love, you're going to put that extra effort into it. You're going to contribute the most you can to society. You're going to be happier in your life. Just so many things are going to be so much better to pick something that you love and that you have a passion for, and give you reason to wake up in the morning.
Yeah, that's awesome, and it doesn't feel like work.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't. I totally agree with that.
Tell us a little bit about, because I know I mentioned in the beginning, you're also a musician, and we've talked about it. Are you currently working on anything? I know you had I'm not sure exactly the genre. I listened to it. It was great. It was more like electronic. But what are you working on?
Yeah, so as far as like a lot of my own stuff, I'd say more recently, a lot of it, because I've been so busy, kind of ends up in a lot of... like whenever a client comes in and they have this idea of what they want to do with their song, and there's an idea I've been working on myself, I'm not afraid to let them use it or steal it or whatever, or have that as part of their music. And in most of those cases, they own it, from there on. But I'm just happy to see it get used.
Yeah.
A lot of times when I do compose things, they are kind of in the pop electronic kind of genres. But the hard thing I have is I'm not a vocalist, so I often don't feel like I can quite finish them all the way. Like I can get them to a certain point, but I have so many people who are vocalists that come in, so knowing that it can get finished by, being able to add anything that I am able to come up with into the music when appropriate, and if it works and if it's their style and things like that, then it's really fun to kind of see it go somewhere in those cases. But you're probably also referring to a project I did. That was about 5 years ago, one called Dr. Z-Man.
Yeah, Z-Man.
And I did some songs where I collaborated. I did grab some singers to come and sing on some of the projects.
Yeah, you had some female singers. You're really good. I can still see the art. It was like a cassette tape.
Yeah, it was a cassette tape.
Yeah, I remember that.
And so, if you wanted to hear like a demo of that, you could go to my website, and under my demos section, I've got like a place where you can play some of the music and hear a little bit of what that was like. That's awesome. The time, but yeah.
So my last question is, what do you like to do outside of all this? I mean, you got your 4 kids, your wife. What kind of things do you like to do for fun?
I love outdoors.
Do you?
I love camping. We have the Provo River Trail here close by our house.
Yeah, it's a great trail.
And I often visit that trail 3 times a day.
Wow.
I'll wake up, I'll go jogging on that trail, and then I'll often like go on a bike ride maybe around dinner time on that trail, and then late at night after the kids go to bed, I like to get on an electric scooter and go on the trail at night with some night lights and things like that. I just love that because I just love the fresh air and getting out there. And for me, it's like the closest trip I have to get to someplace that feels like a little bit like the mountains and get out. But I absolutely love the outdoors. I love hiking. And again, camping is a big one. I like watching basketball, although I'm not an avid basketball watcher because I'm so busy. But that's probably the main things I like.
That's awesome. So some of my big takeaways today, I just love, again, this company that he's built, obviously because it's around music, but even more so, like I said, as a client, that's the biggest testimonial, right? You got a client sitting here wanting to interview me because I'm so impressed with my experience from Noisebox Studios and my experience with Dave, and also just the effort that he's put into keeping up with the technology, to giving such a high value. And I love that he's not afraid to turn down work, and he's not afraid to charge more than maybe some competitors in the area. Because he knows that his product is solid. He believes in what he's doing.
But I do have to say that is a challenging moment, I think, for anybody. Because I think a lot of times we undervalue who we are, what we offer.
100%.
I think most cases. I'm sure there's some cases where somebody thinks they're we've all seen that where somebody thinks they're valued way more. I should be $500 an hour. But I think if we're honest with ourselves and we really come down to it, I think sometimes it's hard to charge that little bit more. Like for me, it was hard to charge. Like right now, I'm $85 an hour, and I might be raising my rates again soon. But every time I've raised my rates, I've been so nervous and scared and overthinking it. But then it's always been a good thing, and people have always appreciated. And I think they recognize the value. And a lot of times what you charge indicates the confidence you have in what you can do and what you do have to offer, and represents you well. I think sometimes when people are trying to be the cheapest all the time, they're really sending a message that they don't intend to be sending.
Or how they feel about inside. I mean, when you walk around and you're on the upper side of the charge, you can put your head up, say, I'm good. This is why I'm charging it. I'm not cocky. I'm just good at it. So I thank you for sharing that. So for those of you out there, if you're underpriced, get your prices up. I remember when Dave sent an email, I don't know if it was between studio switches or what, you went up. I don't know if it was $5 or $10 an hour, but I remember on my end, it had no impact to me. I was like, okay, cool, book it. You know what I mean? So that's funny. You're losing sleep, and I'm going, that makes sense. He should have been up here anyway. But anyway, great company. We're gonna put a link to the site below in the show notes. I think it's noiseboxstudios.com.
Yep.
And you can check out, like I said, some of the other projects, some of the new things happening, some of the exciting things with Gentry, some of his music, just a lot of cool stuff. So Dave, thank you for taking time out of I know you're busy.
Thank you.
And for recording this.
No problem.
All right, guys, thank you for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation with Dave Zimmerman from Noisebox Studios in Provo, Utah. Thanks for checking this out, and we'll see you on the next episode. Have a good one.